changed. I've been changed. I've been changed. I've been changed. I ate algae. I started having feelings.
I'm excited to bring the next panel to you, and it's Greening Black and Brown Communities. And we are honored to have with us Prince George's County's David Harrington from the Chamber of Commerce to lead you in this really fascinating discussion about what's been happening in communities in Maryland, Virginia, and DC. So please welcome David Harrington and the Greening Black and Brown Communities panel.
Thank you very, very much. I'm so delighted to be here, and thank you for spending your time to really begin to do deep dives in this area. So I just want to, whoever put the panel together did an amazing job. I know most of these individuals, and to have both elected officials here who are really steep in this work and activists. I've known Dennis for, I'm not going to say how long, but thank you all for being here as well. I also have one complaint, Caroline, I have one complaint, and that is to have this panel follow Karen and that beautiful. Wow. I promise you that this panel is not going to be about church, Karen. It's not. It's going to be very informative and very, but wow. You are amazing, and thank you for what you do. Really, it was so informative, and we need to get you out to young people. Have you been out to Prince George's County much? All right, let's. Okay.
I'd love to come.
We got to figure that out, okay? We got to figure that out. Okay. Well, that you don't have to convince me at all. But thank you for your work. I really appreciated that. My foot was hopping, and I was, I said, wait a minute, I got to lead the panel. So.
Well, this will get you stronger to lead the panel.
I tell you.
It's on now.
That's what I love about these convenings. We just take it, we go with it, and we do it, and that's what I love. So this is a topic that's near and dear to me, and I'm sure near and dear to everyone. And so we're just going to make this a conversation. I'm not going to just, and questions are going to emerge from what you present. But what I'd like for you to do, you've seen their bios. We're not going to go into bios right now. But what I'd like to do is think about what are you doing in the communities that really brings attention to the environment and nature in your communities. And then after that, we're going to talk about what are the obstacles that you're facing. Okay? So Mayor, if you don't mind, we'll start with you and then just go down the road, if that's okay.
Fine, that's fine. Good afternoon, everyone. Mayor Crudup from the great town of Eagle Harbor, and it's a pleasure for me to be here today. Well, let me start with the big thing. We're right next to a power plant, and that right there creates its own set of unique problems. The interesting thing, though, that you will find is that we are a historically black resort township on the water. The only township I can think of in Prince George's County that's on water. We're on the Patuxent River, and we were founded back in 1929 by some forward-thinking black Americans who wanted to be able to take their kids and family to the beaches and waters, but we couldn't go to the public beaches and water because of segregation. So in 1929, they carved out a piece of land about a mile square. It's pretty much a boot shaped like, I guess, Italy. But so over the years, things have changed, obviously. The young folks don't want to be there. There's no roller coasters, no boardwalk. It's just a lazy, hazy town. I like to think of it as Mayberry on the river. And I love it. I really do love it. That's one of the reasons I've been the mayor for the past 5 years. But we have a unique situation with this power plant. We have to get along with them. They're not going anywhere. We know that pollution does occur in the air, in the water, in the ground, and we have worked with them over the past years that I've been the mayor. We've had to go to court over some things. We've settled some things out of court. But what I've found that's very important is to have that conversation on a regular basis on what's going on. We have a PAC right now, me and the plant manager, and that PAC is anything that affects Eagle Harbor, in the air, in the water, in the earth, we need to talk about it before we go to court, because
excellent.
it's pretty easy for our township to get lawyers to help us out for these kinds of situations, and they know that. And they know that I have a big mouth, and I'll go get some pro bono lawyers, and we'll go to court. So that's our biggest challenge.
That's perfect. 'Cause
Biggest
Dennis,
challenge.
you've done a lot of work in environmental justice, among other things. Talk about what are some of the things that this communities are facing, and how you're working around that.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say, my hat's off to the organizers of this conference. I attended the first Taking Nature Black Conference at the Audubon Naturalist Society, and how this has grown. So, I'd like to congratulate and tip of the hat to the ANS staff and the folks that have moved this forward. This is great. So I'm in Washington, D.C., and I like to specify more precisely where I've done most of the work that I've been involved with, and that's in far northeast Washington, D.C., east of the Anacostia River, in a ward. The city is broken down into 8 wards. And so the majority of my work has been in Ward 7. But of course, you can start one place, and the more you work, the more your work expands. And so fortunately, over the years, we've been able to expand our work throughout the city, but still with a very keen focus on the Anacostia River. And I'm 71 years old, and I grew up right in the same community where I'm working. So I'm living and working, playing, everything right there. And a very unique thing about the Anacostia River for me is that that's where I learned how to swim. It was because there were no swimming pools available for me and young people in my community. The closest swimming pool was a pool up on off of Benning Road Northeast, and it was all of 3 feet deep on one end, and we used to call it the public bathtub because nobody could really swim. All you could do was stand up. So I went there all at one time, didn't enjoy it, didn't go back. But we had the Anacostia River. I could walk there. It was about just a little over a quarter mile from my house, even though we had to navigate our way through the landfill to get there in Kenilworth, what they call Kenilworth Park now. It was a landfill. So as I grew up and started a family and became more aware of the conditions that were not the same, even though I'm going to tell you, going through navigating the landfill and through the stream that led to the river, it was still, it was pretty bad when I became a grown person and looked and saw what had happened to this water body that, was so beloved and so dear to me. It was trashed, it was very degraded, and it became a mission for me to get involved with restoring health. So that's been the centerpiece of most of the work that I've been involved with. And truly, I can attest that by 2025, the Anacostia River will be fishable and swimmable.
All right.
We're presently exploring, as a matter of fact, there are days that the river has been identified as being able to actually swim. We're in the process of navigating where we can locate pools, natural pools along the river at various places. And that's a major accomplishment. So we're really looking forward to continuing that work. And the biggest part of my work, I would say, and ending on this, is we've had a very keen and targeted focus on the youth. And that's been the centerpiece of my work and the part of the work that I'm the most proud of.
No, thanks to your work. I mean, we've had some, did we have some bald eagles over there?
We have
We've
bald
had
eagles
bald
are now
eagles, we've
nesting
had,
on the Anacostia.
Egrets over there.
That's right.
We've had turtles,
Yeah.
we've
Yes.
had work.
That speaks to it, yes.
So I want to now turn to Robert, correct? Yeah, to turn to Robert. So you've heard about some of the work that's going on in Ward 7. I know you're in Ward 8, right? What are some of the things that are going, having lived in Martin Luther King Avenue a long time ago, appreciate your work. What are some of the things that you're doing to bring attention to nature in your area? Sure.
Well, my name is Robert Carpenter. I'm supervisor of the Ward 8 Woods. We focus mainly on the Ward 8 area. It's over 500 acres of wooded area that became a common dumping ground for contractors, residents in the neighborhood, and everybody else. You know, we have signs that we put out. We go knock on doors in the community and let them know what we're doing. And they look and say, y'all pulled all that trash out the woods? Yes, we did. You know, and it just feels good to give back, because I lived in Ward 8 for 30 plus years. You know, and when people look and say, was you working this place and that place? I be like, yeah, how you know? We seen a lot of bags out there, you know, and I have a background. I made mistakes in the past. I started working with Nate. He ain't discriminate on my background, and I appreciate that. That's why I give my all to my job and giving back to the community, because I just like it. I just like it.
Yeah, I've worked on Anacostia as well, and bringing out all that trash. It's amazing how much tons of trash that we see in the Anacostia.
Like, we done got around like 80 tons, and it's still more to be done. It's just a team of me and 4 other people that go out 3 times a week. We breaking records from when we had 50 volunteers with us, just by ourselves.
Thank you for your organizing, brother. Really appreciate it. And I want to return. We're going to go to now the 2 mayors, but I want to return to this downstreaming that's happening in African American communities, and that intentional downstreaming, and how do we address that in terms of getting people activated to deal with it. So, but Mayor, tell me about what's going on in Brentwood.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. One of the things that we want to preserve in Brentwood is the trees. We are big on trees preservation. We try to form this committee. We're going to talk about the engagement that is hard sometimes, but we have been developing this 3-committee green team. So we are trying to not only the volunteers are adult. I use the students, actually. You know, I call the schools to get those volunteers, those kids that need service hours. So I use that as a encouragement to continue planting trees. All the events that we have has to do something with the tree planting. Also, we've been teaching a lot about the pollinators, the bees, and I've seen a lot of kids, you know, getting scared when they see a bee. We try to protect them and explain and educate them the reasons why they're here, why they are important. So we have to go to that level, you know, to explain to our children, because even adults, we have so much to learn. But when you put that into the kids' head, those are the ones who are actually going to teach their parents the importance, because I see my son repeating the same thing all the time. Every time we see a bee going on. So there's a lot of things that are happening in Brentwood to help our environment, but we need more involvement. And that, I think, it might be the challenging part that we are facing at this time.
No, thank you for, does everybody know where Brentwood is? Anybody? Everybody, good, okay. Just want to make sure that we put some, you don't? So
It's
tell
not DC, because some people think that it's Brentwood, DC is part. No, we actually are in Prince George's County. We are close to the border. The first city is Mount Rainier, then is Brentwood, North Brentwood, and Hyattsville. So we are like crunching in the middle of the two cities. So, but we're trying to preserve our greenest part, because as you see development happening in DC, it's kind of hard to keep up.
So, so that Route 1 corridor that goes from all the way up to Mount Rainier to University of Maryland, Brentwood is like right in the middle there. And Mayor's doing a fantastic job there. She really is. The first Latina to be elected mayor in Brentwood. Did an amazing job. And she got a whole slate elected. So she said, I'm going to get a whole new group of people there. And she knocked on doors, and she's making it happen over there. So thank you for your work. Mayor, tell us about Forest Heights.
Well, I'm going to tell you about Forest Heights, but I'm going to tell you about the other towns that I work with also, as you
Sure.
well know, because you get my emails. So it's really a pleasure to be here. I like Dennis. I was here back in, oh my God, I'm not going to tell you, a long time ago, when they first had this Taking Black, Nature Black. And it's just amazing to see the number of African-American young people that are here. Because it's very important that we get our young African-American, our young brown people involved in what is happening in the environmental world, and to also step up so that they can take Dennis Chestnut's place and my place. But I also, when I thought about what was I going to say, I had a kickoff, because yesterday I was at the place that I kind of first started on this journey that I'm on. I was standing before the senators in the Maryland State House, and I was asking them to ensure that a group called Sustainable Maryland had some non-lapsing funding so that they can continue the great work that they do with all the municipalities. And so when I first started this, I stood in front of the Maryland State House, because as a council person for our town, our roof leaked. And I don't mean just leak like leak here. I mean, we had sometimes more buckets in the room than we had people. And so, you know, we could have we have a flat roof, we could have went there and we could have gotten some tar and put it on there, but we didn't have any money. Because municipalities, regardless of what y'all think, we're not Baltimore and we're not DC, most municipalities are small and we don't have any money. So we can't even do simple things like repair our buildings sometimes. And so someone had told me to go plant these trees, and I started planting the trees, and I had to start looking elsewhere besides this area to find out how to plant the trees, and I ended up on the West Coast. And then I saw something called green infrastructure. And I was like, oh my God, this is what we're going to do. And I called the gentleman down at the landscape architect school or the architect building down in DC. And I said, you have a green roof. I want to see that green roof, because I had never seen a green roof. This is 2007. There wasn't a lot of green roofs around. I went around up there and I saw it. I came back to my council and I said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have a green roof. We're going to work green. And so then we had to go to the Maryland State Capitol, to the Senate, and we had to ask them for $250,000 to do our roof. And so one of the senators asked me, he said, what is a green roof? And I'm from Indiana, so some people pronounce it differently than I am, but it's R-O-O-F, that thing up there. And so he said, what is a green roof? And I said, if you give me the money, I'll show you. And so he gave me the money, and the town of Forest Heights became the first municipality that renovated their building in the state of Maryland and has a green roof, and we still have a green roof. And it wasn't quite that easy because I had to fight people on my council. I had to fight people in the community that was wondering why was I doing $250,000 to put up something that I could have did for 10. But that $250,000 that we put into that roof keeps pollution down. It helps the birds. It also keeps a lot of the water out, a lot of the pollution out of. Because before you get to the Anacostia, there's the Oxen Run. Everybody, and you pick up, Robert, I'm sure you picked up a lot of trash in the Oxen Run. The Oxen Run is one of the shortest tributaries on the Anacostia. And I discovered that if I use the Anacostia, I can, or the Oxen Run, I can get lots of money. So I began to bring a lot of attention to the Oxen Run. Now the Oxen Run has a bike trail. We've removed a whole lot of trash. I don't know how many tons, because I just do. I don't try to figure out what we've done. But we also had schools there. So we got the children involved. Then we got the community involved. And we got the churches involved. And so being the mayor, sometimes it's just one person that can start something. So each one of y'all can just start something. You can go to your council. You can be the fire starter. You can decide that you want this to happen. And then you try to get your elected officials to do it. One really quick story is the Anacostia right there where the Oxen Run right there where it goes into DC or into Maryland had a whole lot of trash right there. And I was at a library opening and Mayor Gray was there. And so Mayor Gray, I was talking about how clean Anacostia was. And I told him, that's great how clean Anacostia was, but you got a whole lot of trash on the Oxen Run, and I only have 2,000 people. Y'all need to clean y'all side of the river. And so he sent Robert and his friends out there, and now that side of the river is clean.
So I think, if we put a round of applause for the sort of the regional approaches. I know we only have about maybe 10 minutes, I think. Oh, shoot. Okay, and then maybe take time for questions from the audience? Okay, so I just want to ask one more question and then get a question from the audience. So let this, and then we'll be quick on that. But I want you to think on the systems level, because what I heard from each one of you, and that what we see is downstreaming, right? So many of you experience like the trash coming into your communities, right? And you don't see this in Potomac, right? You don't see all the trash in Potomac. What you see is that the intentional downstreaming that's happening to areas in DC, the areas in Prince George's County, that the collection of trash is not something that's just happened by happenstance. It's almost intentional, right? Can you speak to then the sort of the regional approach that we have to take to address this downstreaming that's happening in the communities? Because there's the work that the grassroots work, but what do we need to do from a larger lens about dealing with downstreaming and how it's affecting African American communities?
I'll address some of that.
Yeah, please.
Absolutely.
Anybody. This is open for anybody.
Well, one of the things that we did in DC to address that issue was something that was very controversial up on the front end of it, but has proved to be very successful. And that was we got a bill passed, this is a law, a 5 cents bag fee, a fee on bags. And one of the things that led up to that was, of course, we had coined the term for all these plastic bags because they were everywhere, trees blowing around. We called them urban tumbleweed. And so we were able to get that passed in spite of the pushback from the plastics industry and all of that. But that 5 cents bag fee wound up being replicated in Montgomery County and even in Baltimore. Baltimore took it a little further, and they put 25 cents on theirs. But what it has done, and it wasn't the idea was not to make money. That was not the driver. It was actually to change behavior. And I can truly say that in the organization that I founded, Groundwork, Anacostia River, DC, managed these litter or trash capturing devices called litter traps. And for 10 years, we were removing trash from the tributaries, keeping it from entering the river. Within 6 months of that bag fee passing, we basically did not see any plastic bags in our count of litter that we were taking out. So the point that I'm making is policy is very important. And once the policy is there, the implementation has to go hand in hand. Navigating that is truly important for everyone from the very grassroots level all the way through, the various levels of our municipal governments and even our federal government as well. Because one of the things I can say about trash, and that is, it's the visible pollutant. It's the one you see. Right. But the real work, as we're engaged in now, is that other nasty stuff that's in the sediment. That is what has really polluted the waterways. So, but the policy and implementation, very key.
Anybody else want to jump in? Go ahead.
I would like to say that one of the things that we have done in Brentwood is that we are charging now every time that we see construction going on, any renovations, anything that it has to do with it. We ask them to get the permit from the county, the permit from the town, but also they need to have a dumpsters because that way we know that that company is going to take that, legally dump it somewhere where it's supposed to be, versus what they used to do in the past, just to contract or get a truck and just dump it somewhere else. So now every time there's gonna be any construction, they have to have a dumpster out. So that's one of the things that comes with policy, and it's a fee involved, of course, but we're making sure that that debris is not just going anywhere else, but the right place.
Robert, you want to
What me and my crew do in the Ward 8 area, along with knocking on doors, educating people on what we're doing and stuff like that, we knock on their doors, let them know what we doing. We have signs that we put out there that says your litter hit close to home, and we let them know what them signs mean. Even though you're throwing the trash behind the building, in the woods, when you open your window trying to get that breath of fresh air, you're going to smell that pamper that you threw out there. And they take notice of it. You actually see a difference when you come back to that site 2-3 weeks from there,
I'd like to...
policy?
Yeah, we have a different approach. We have a community-based approach, although I'm learning some things from this panel. And our approach is to have a cleanup of the shoreline 2 or 3 times a year. And the people just come out and we get big bags. And what we've done is we've got a partnership going with the power plant. They provide the boots and the trash bags and all of the boats up and down the river. And they provide the refreshments and so forth. And we clean up the shoreline 3 or 4 times a year. And we get tons of trash coming downstream on the Patuxent River, which flows down into the Chesapeake Bay. So we get trash from upper parts of Prince George's County, Howard County, and where the Patuxent River starts. The second thing that we are going to do this year is we have a 9-acre waterfront park that's fenced off, and you only get to use it if you belong to the town. We'll give you a key. If you want to pay a small fee, you can use it. And what we plan to do this year is, one of the agreements is, if you get a key to use our pier or to launch your boat or have a picnic on our park, you're going to have to agree to join us on the cleanup 3 times a year. So that's a new approach we're going to kick off.
No, so we heard, I think, about policy and the importance of policy, also education, knocking on doors, letting people know what's going on, and towns taking ownership of their own cleanup in a way that's very, very unique. So a great assembly of panelists here. So I want to open the floor for anybody who might have some questions. Anybody? Yes, ma'am. And we don't have a microphone. If you don't mind projecting and speaking up. Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The mayor mentioned that you all are looking for more participation. And so my question for everybody perhaps is, how can all of the organizations, groups, individuals represented here get involved and support the work that you all are doing on the ground?
Good. Everybody heard the question? Good?
Can I?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, so as I mentioned, Forest Heights is a very small town, didn't have a whole lot of money, and we had a lot of work to do. And let me have a disclosure here that I am no longer the mayor of Forest Heights. I asked God, could I do something else? And so I'm the executive director of the Maryland Black Mayors. So I work with 17 different municipalities. And the lessons that I learned from being the mayor is each one of you are needed. I am what they call a circuit rider. I got a lot of hats, a lot of jobs, got to make a lot of money. But I'm a circuit rider for Fairmont Heights. On the 25th of April, I'm sending a plug out there. On the 25th of April, I need to have 100 volunteers to come into that town to pick up trash. Those are the things that you can do. You can come and ask the mayors at any of the towns, whatever you do, what can I do? We need to have trees planted. Come in, ask the mayor if that's what y'all do, because I get a lot of trees planted. I got about 3,000 trees planted. Ask anybody. Got a bus coming through, I ask you to come plant some trees. Can I come plant some trees? Do you have expertise? If you have expertise, come to one of these small towns and say, this is what I do. What can we do for you? That's how you can do it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
What we do
Oh, sorry.
in the Ward 8 Woods, we have volunteer events on the first and second Saturdays of each month. Roughly 2.5 hours. Volunteers come out, join our mailing list, and just clean up. You know, and if anybody interested in joining our mailing list, we send 1, maybe 2 emails a month to keep you up to date on the progress that we're making in Ward 8.
So we're going to try to get to as many questions as possible. Yes.
Well, I just wanted to mention the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay is an organization that I would recommend that you plug into. They have programs that will support some of what you're talking about, along with the Anacostia Watershed Society that does an annual watershed cleanup of the whole Anacostia watershed, probably over a couple of hundred different sites where that's taking place. So plug into organizations like that, and that will be one way. They even have a great outreach mechanism in place.
So we want to get to as many questions. I think this gentleman has a question here.
Okay, yes, good afternoon, and
Good afternoon.
Jackie, good to see you again after many years. I just wanted to ask all the mayors, are you familiar with the Maryland Department of Natural Resources program Open Space?
Yes.
Which can assist you in funding for recreational-related activities? And have you also applied for monies from Department of Housing and Community Development? Sometimes these issues kind of flow together, the environment, housing, community development on a state of Maryland government level.
I can speak to that. My town currently has a grant from the Maryland Department of Natural Resources for $1 million to correct some runoff and flooding in our town. So I've been very happy with the response that we've received from them. We expect to ask for additional money for improvements in the town. So thank you for that information.
Next question? All right, I think this woman over here, and then we'll go up, get to you in the back, okay? This person over here, sir, ma'am, could you raise your hand again? Yeah, is that, and then ma'am, you'll be next, okay.
Hello.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, my name is Lemuel, and I have a question because I'm a biologist, and I don't really get to see how communities or how businesses, I don't know, I don't even think they're pointing the finger because there's no way to point the finger at anybody on this, but the Anacostia River, how are they mitigating for the contaminants in the soil? I know they don't want to disrupt it, but how do you, is there a solution?
Can I take that?
Well, go ahead, Mayor Goodall, and then
One,
Dennis, yes.
and I know, Dennis, you're talking about the Anacostia and the trash that's there, but one of the things that I've been able to identify in Fairmont Heights, because I went to the source, I believe in going to the source. In Fairmont Heights, there are 2 junkyards, and those 2 junkyards don't have underlinements under it, and they're right on Nash Creek. And Nash Creek is one of the dirtiest creeks leading to the Anacostia. And so I have been fighting with the Maryland Environmental Department, Prince George County, that we need to look at the source. You start looking at the source and start cutting the pollution off at the head. Then when it gets down to the Anacostia, you've reduced some of that, the ground seepage of the oils and contaminants that are coming from those junk cars and the other chemicals that are going into the groundwater. So we need you to look at those things at the source.
Yes, one of the things that I would recommend that you do is go on the website of the Department of Energy and Environment, the District Department of Energy and Environment. And there's presently a remedial investigation feasibility study underway. And we're right now at close to the end of a comment period that's focused on remediating those the sediments. So, a number of things, not to get into all, they say, facts tell, stories sell, but there are hot spots along the Anacostia that are the contaminators that are there's going to be a record of decision this spring, and the polluters are going to pay for what has to be done to clean up. Now, they're at the point of moving forward with a few options to approach that, and of course, as you stated, one of them is to not disturb the bottom to the extent that they would send those contaminants throughout the waterway. But I would recommend you go on to the district's Department of Energy and Environment's website. It has an extensive amount of information that will address your question specifically.
So we have time for one more question, and we'll be back. Yes. Yeah, she's right there.
Hi.
Hi.
So, we've been talking a lot about cleanup efforts, and we just talked some about stemming the flow up of some contaminants. I have been thinking about some efforts on an international and national level of tracking trash that's been cleaned up, categorizing it, and potentially linking it back to particular companies or particular sources to try to again, stem the source or try to elicit some responsibility for the problems that are being caused by, like, say, a certain soda factory that produces a lot of plastic bottles, et cetera. And I would be interested to hear if there are any local township level efforts to plug into something like that, because I feel like that's an achievable goal, on a slightly smaller scale.
Okay. So we have about 3 minutes to get to her question. Anybody want to?
I want to give a plug to the universities in the area. Eagle Harbor has been very fortunate to have partnerships with Morgan State University, with the University of Maryland, and they are willing and they have helped do research so that we can find out what kind of contaminants we have in the water and the airways. And it's a good resource for the folks here who are doing environmental kinds of things. So I want to plug that plug. And there's something called a PEARL, a research center, Patuxent Environmental Area Research Center. And their main goal is to do research up and down the Patuxent River to make sure the oysters, the fish, and wildlife in that area is doing well in that area.
Okay. I think, can I take one more? Yeah. Somebody had their hand up in the back. Yes, go ahead. And then we'll close out there. I always hate to leave somebody like they get the last one.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Good afternoon. I have a question in regards to the power plant. What is the balance or the ratio of the problems that they are causing versus the actual attempt to help your city or help your community fight the issues that you have challenges with in the beginning?
It's a big question, and we don't have all afternoon to talk about all the
I was going to say,
problems.
that's the next panel.
But
Because that's an excellent question.
But,
Go ahead, man.
but I can tell you this, we minuscule. What we get from them versus the problems, minuscule. It's decreased the property values in our neighborhood. There's always some type of problem going on with a coal-fired plant. We got them to reduce the coal and start using natural gas. There's always problems with heat because anytime you generate energy, you produce heat. The heat increases the water temperature. It causes problems. Then they need to draw water out of the wells because we're all on wells in Eagle Harbor. And that causes, so there's just so many problems it would take all afternoon to tell you about them. What we have been able to do is get a few $1 million out of them. It's not nearly what we need to get, but we'll continue to work with them and try to exist. So thank you for that question.
And maybe.
One other thing I will say is also the internal combustion engine and power, that fossil fuels is old technology. We all need to think a little bold and actually move forward. This is 2020, so let's have 2020 vision with a bold view on what we need to do to correct that kind of problem. But that's old technology. We need to get it out of the way.
So join me in thanking Robert Carpenter, Dennis Chestnut, the mayor of the town of Great Town. The great town of Eagle Harbor, the mayor of the wonderful town of Forest Heights, and the mayor of the fantastic town of Brentwood. What is it? We're a green town. Please take our panel. It's a pleasure serving you today.
So now I keep my skin wet to enable respiration. Eat flies, fleas, and ticks without reservation. I sniff my way back here for Amplex's preservation to restart the cycle that maintains my froggy nation. Cause I'm grown. Help me. Watch. What you do. Returning the marvel of my life depends on you. Educate yourself. Protect me. That's where.